We say all the time that consistency is a superpower. Steadiness, consistency. These are the things about stuff in life. Like, you don't have to be exceptional. You just have to be consistent, and you will steadily make it. And this is one of the beauties of, like, I did the Ironman triathlon. And for those who don't know, and the Ironman is like a 2.4 mile swim and a 112 mile bike ride and then a marathon. And that's a thing that takes all day, and if you can't rush it unless you're like an elite athlete, and I'm no elite athlete. You're talking about like a long, steady pace.
Yeah.
And it's such a great metaphor for life. And actually, I often tell people that the finish line of an Ironman race is probably the closest picture of heaven I've ever seen. In Hebrews 12, where it's talking about, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us run with perseverance the race that is marked out for us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. This whole thing that is there in front of us, the finish line of the race, there's all these people cheering on very ordinary people getting to their finish line, and it's pretty awesome. And the elite athletes of a triathlon, many of them will have already finished a long time ago, but they'll come back for that last hour and watch the like normies, the people who had no shot come across that finish line, and then someone said, "Hey, you're an Ironman. You finished this thing," and it's a pretty awesome thing. If you ever get a chance, a finish line of a marathon, finish line of an Ironman triathlon, to go at the end of the day and watch the last people, they're not running, they're walking slow. But getting across the line.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Faith Ignite podcast, and we're so excited you decided to join us for today's episode. Hey, and before we jump in today's episode with our guest, hey, I want to ask you to do a few things. Hey, if this podcast is helping you, shaping you, motivating you, encouraging you, building your faith up, hey, I would ask that you hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, turn that notification bell on so you are aware when new episodes are released. And hey, if you want to take your faith just one step further, you can go ahead and become a financial partner of this ministry. You can follow the link below. It'll take you to our website. You can partner with us there, where we can take these stories of faith and send them to the world, around the world, to people that need them most, people that never heard the gospel, people that don't even know who Christ is. We're able to introduce Christ to them in a new and in a fresh way. And so by your partnership, you're able to help us do exactly that. And lastly, if something's going on in your life, we would love to know about it. We would love to celebrate with you, with God, with what God is doing in your life. And so, hey, drop a comment below, send us an email, reach out to us on social media. We would love to know what God is doing in your life so we can celebrate with you. And so, like I said, we're going to jump into today's episode. But before we do, hey, we have a really good guest with us today, and I'm excited to dive into this conversation. And so allow me to introduce our guest. So our guest is a global leader, adventurer, and a passionate disciple maker. He has pastored multiple churches. He has served at Oral Roberts University as a professor and all. He's had 3 different degrees, undergrad, master, and 2 master's degrees. So he's very educated. And then he's the founder of what we call Project Doxa, and it's an organization that trains and equip missionaries, leaders around the world, and they travel around the world doing extensive training. He's led over, let me get this right now. He's led over 150 missions teams to more than 50 countries. He has a goal of trying to do a marathon, or at least a half marathon, in 50 states. At this current point in the time of this recording, he has hit 39, so he has 11 more to go. He has summited Mount Kilimanjaro. I think I said that right. Yes, Mount Kilimanjaro in 2020, and he did his first Ironman in 2021. Him and his wife both live here in Bixby, and they live with their 3 children. And so, without further ado, please help me welcome our guest, Mr. Jimmy Shaw.
Hey, thank you.
Man, I appreciate you take some time to come and visit with us, man. I know you have a ton of things. You could be doing a lot of other things, but thank you so much, man, for blessing us with your presence.
Yeah, I'm super glad to be here.
Oh, absolutely, man. So one way I love to start every episode, who is Jimmy Shaw?
That's a fun question. I often think about this when I talk about the fact, my wife and I, we've been married 22 years, and in a way, she married one guy and has now been married to like a lot of different guys over the last 2 decades. And so when we first got married, we were young church planters, doing some short-term missionary work in different places. And, I can share a bit of that story in a bit, but how I got involved doing that. But we started taking these mission teams and planting a church, and got involved doing that for a while, and ended up teaching at ORU. You mentioned that. And which was super exciting. And we just kept going, serving in different places. We have these relationships with different missionaries and partners all over the world, and we've kind of picked them up along the way.
Yeah.
And now we've been to kind of a lot of places,
Yeah.
served in a lot of places. And these days, I lead 2 different organizations, as you said. And one of those is Project Doxa, our missionary org, and we support projects and missionaries all over the world. And the other is kind of a newer venture for us. We started in 2020. We started a company called Disciple Trek. We take people on hiking and climbing adventures as a way to raise money for missionaries.
Okay.
And so these days, as I said, when my wife and I got married, you know, she was married to a church planter. These days, she's married to a triathlete and a mountain climber and a guy who still does some mission stuff. And so lot of different fun things these days.
So we'll jump in that. So remind me, Mount Kilimanjaro, that's in Tanzania?
Tanzania, yeah. It's on the border of Tanzania and Kenya, but it's in Tanzania.
Okay. And how tall is that?
19,341. So
is that, I mean, I'm not a big mountain guy, but is that one of the highest peaks in the world?
It is the highest peak in Africa. It's one of the 7 summits, so it's the highest point in the continent of Africa. It is taller than any place in North America. It's taller than any place in
like we talk like
Europe.
Buildings, skyscrapers. It's taller than...
Very, very tall. Very, very tall.
Wow.
Yeah. So very tall. So it takes about a week to get to the summit of Kili. So and then we do a lot of work in the Himalayas. We take people to a lot of interesting mountains. I've been on some big mountains and some other places too, a little higher even than Kili.
Yeah.
So so that's all kind of a crazy whole thing how that happened.
Okay, so I kind of grew up thinking like when you're doing ministry, it's behind the pulpit.
Yeah.
It's you pastor a church, so on and so forth. But in your case, you started that way, but now ministry looks a little different for you.
Yeah.
What is that, or like how did you get into that now? Not being in the four walls, but now going all around the world and discipling people.
Sure. So when I grew up in a small town north and west of here, about an hour, in a church that only had like 16 old people and me and my brother. Okay, and I never really knew any Christian people within like a year or two of my age.
Yeah.
And then when I came to school at ORU, I had never really traveled. I never done anything like that. And so I come from this small Pentecostal church, and it was just like a crazy experience. I had an encounter with the Lord. I ended up at ORU to study the Bible. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, well, this is what ministry is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're going to be a pastor and whatever. And I spent a season of my life doing that. But really, what happened was I went on my first mission trip that summer of my freshman year at ORU, and I remember praying and saying, Lord, if you open the door, I will go. Mm-hmm. And he opened a lot of doors, so we just kept going.
Yeah.
And we just kept doing that and kept doing that. And then when we planted the church, you know, that was very traditional ministry stuff. I've been doing that a long time. And so in 2018, at the end of 2018, I was on a ministry trip in India, and I was coming back from India, and I landed in Japan. My college roommate lives in Japan full time, and he had run a marathon the day before I got there. And so he said, hey man, I want to go on a little hike. I need to stretch my legs, you know, it's just a couple miles, won't be too bad. And I thought, how hard could it be, you know? And so I went on a hike with him, and he almost killed me. And you know, that night at dinner, he didn't like shame me. He didn't like say anything, but he kind of looked at me like, I wonder if the athlete I used to know, I wonder if he's still in there somewhere. And it was really tough for me, to be honest. And so on the long flight home over the Pacific, which is plenty long, I remember having a heart-to-heart with the Lord saying, you know, what's going on in my life? Like, what's really happening? And I felt like the Lord said, you know, you're just playing it safe. And you know, at that time, like, if people look at my resume and stuff, they would say, like, this guy's doing missionary work, he's pastoring churches, he's doing things, he's doing anything but playing it safe. But I knew, like, I wasn't really where I needed to be in some ways. My vision had kind of faded. I always tell people that I was always talking about what I used to do, didn't have anything in front of me. And I was out of shape physically, which was not, you know, like, that was just emblematic of other stuff. And so I came home, and I got off the plane. I had this idea, so I'm going to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I sense like a call to it, not even like an opportunity. Sometimes I feel like the Lord opens a door and says, hey, there's an opportunity, you can go here. But I felt like, no, you need to do this. And so I went to my wife and I said, hey, I'm gonna go climb Kilimanjaro. And she said, can you climb Kilimanjaro? Like, will you die, you know? And I said, I'll tell you what, I won't go to Kili unless I've run a marathon. I won't run a marathon unless I've run a half marathon. I'm going to sign up for a half marathon today. And worst case scenario, we're out the money for the half marathon. And she said, fine. And I said, all right, but if I do the half, I'm going to do the full. If I do the full, I'm going to the mountain. If I go to the mountain, I don't know what's coming next.
Yeah.
And so I started training. I had one of those stickers she had bought me a long time ago. It wasn't on my car, but I had it. It said 0.0, I don't run. And I used to make fun of all the people who are running around town. I was like, why? I used to yell out the window like, hey, nobody's chasing you, you know? And just being silly. But I never really run. I never really done anything. I mean, I played sports and things, but I never like trained like that. And so I just said, I'll go run a mile. How hard could it be?
Right.
But it was pretty tough.
I bet.
And I couldn't run a mile. So I started doing like 9-minute walk, 1 minute jog, 9-minute walk, 1 minute jog to like 30 minutes 3 times a week. And then I slowly built from there over some time. So that was January of 2019. And by April of 2019, I did my first half marathon in Oklahoma City. And it was like a really powerful experience for me. I'd like jog for 2.5 minutes and walk for 1.5 minutes, just rotated.
Yeah.
And when I got to the finish line, I was just in tears, you know, that I had done this thing. That some people could do it no problem, but for me it was like a big accomplishment. And so by November of that year, I did a full marathon. And in January of 2020, I went to Africa to go climb Kilimanjaro and spent a week on the mountain, got to the summit. And it was like really hard, challenging, cold. It was tough. But I came away from there with this like real understanding that like these kind of experiences can change people's lives.
Yeah.
And I came away with a vision for Disciple Trek, which was our business that we started. And so I don't necessarily recommend starting like a global travel company in a pandemic. But in 2020, we said, all right, this is what we're going to do. And I came home and we launched Disciple Trek. And it's been wild, man. So we have taken teams all over the world. We hike and we do all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm still doing a lot of very traditional ministry. I was in a sermon prep meeting with our church this morning. So I'm still doing a lot of that. I'm flying to Colorado on Friday to go, you know, speak in a church. So I'm still doing a lot of like inside the four walls ministry. But a lot of what we do right now is we take people on these like very difficult, tough adventures to bring alive a part of their faith and use it as a tool for discipleship. And we do it for kind of 3 reasons. And I don't always say this in every context, okay, but like 1, it generates revenue, and we needed that for our missionaries. 2, it was just inherently good to do hard things, you know, and to take people to do the difficult things. It was like training for like a metaphor for life. And 3, we work in some countries in the world that don't want people like us working there, and our business keeps an open door there. And that's a big part of the ministry. And so when we first started doing that, there were people that would come and they would say, you used to be a pastor, you used to be a missionary, now all you do is run and climb. And I was like, I'd love to tell you more about what we do. And some people have got it and some people didn't. And so like I would say like the number of people, like the percentage of say Christians who are like supportive of what we do, like got narrower and narrower in a way. But the people who got it, they would like run through a wall for us. They were like, yeah, we get it, we understand. And so that's how we got involved doing this. I didn't know exactly what that would become. I didn't know that would become probably like 80% of my day to day, you know, is now like setting up trips for people, climbing mountains, doing all kinds of kind of crazy stuff. Yeah. And so,
man, I think about the practicality of what you were talking about. Like, yes, it might seem like it's just a marathon. Yes, it might seem like it's just a mountain or a half marathon. But like you talked about how you started somewhere. Started with the half, and then the full, and then the mountain. And that's how faith works, where it's one little small thing that you take the step towards it. Like you talked about, you couldn't even run a mile.
No, dude, I couldn't run a quarter mile. it was pretty rough.
But then you just started with something. You started with where you were. You walked, you ran, you walked, you ran until the point that you built up to the point where you could run a half.
Yeah.
And that's how, and I think about the simplicity of that and correlate with that's how faith is. Like we just simply take the small thing that God asks us to do, and we just move and move and move and move to the point where now we're climbing mountains.
Yeah. I mean, the things we do now, they seem second nature to me now, doing some of this stuff. But like at the time, it just seemed crazy. So like it was really funny at the beginning too. And this was just an interesting thing. How many people were super encouraging right at the beginning. They're like, hey, yeah, the fat guy, he runs a little. That's nice. Good for you, man. You know, and then it switched so quickly to, oh, I could never do what you do. You're an athlete. And it just pivoted so fast for so many people because they said, oh, you're this some sort of special kind of person, not understanding like you were here for the whole ride, man.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't have to go run marathons, okay? You can do what you want, but like we so limit what we can do, what we're capable of, both in terms of faith and life and all kinds of things, just by our own like limiting beliefs at the beginning, instead of understanding like if I pay a price and I work hard and I do like consistency daily, just keep grinding, I can become a different kind of person. And so we always tell people that like you overestimate what you can do in a day, in a week, maybe even in a month, but you underestimate what you can do in years. And if you're steady in some of these things, you can become like a different person. So when I started doing half marathons, I did that first one. I didn't know I would do a bunch more. And then I got involved with some other people that had done a half in like every state. And I thought that sounds like a great thing. So I started down that road.
Yeah.
And so every month I was just doing a different one in a different place and these kind of things. And so now, I've done a half marathon every month for 78 months in a row.
Wow.
And so since April of 2019. And I say 78. It'll be 78 next week when I do my next one. So 77 currently, 78 coming. And so I've either hiked those or ran in races. And I've done a lot of races in a lot of places. Yeah. And then I did 7 marathons, an Ironman triathlon. I ran the Everest Marathon. I did a bunch of crazy stuff that at the time I just didn't believe that I could do. But like just by steady doing this stuff, it became for me just a really encourager of my faith and a builder of my faith, because what I realized was that the Lord was prepping me for some other things in other areas of my life, unrelated to my physical fitness stuff, but that I was learning through the crucible on the trail and hiking and running how to be the kind of person who could lead in those other environments. And that's been really encouraging for me.
Right. It's so, and like, I think about it more and more as you talk about it. Like you said, people were there from the beginning. They think, oh, like you started one way, but now you're something else. No, but like you talk about, it's just consistency. And like whether that's physical, whether that's regarding your faith, whatever it is, if you apply consistency to it and the right belief, man, you can do whatever.
We say all the time that consistency is a superpower. Steadiness, consistency. These are the things about stuff in life. Like you don't have to be exceptional. You just have to be consistent, and you will steadily make it. And this is one of the beauties of like, I did the Ironman triathlon. And for those who don't know, and I mean, we always joke that triathlon is like swimming, biking, and running, but there's really a fourth discipline that's like talking about triathlon. But it's kind of a little joke. But like there's no such thing as somebody who does like an Ironman and doesn't tell everybody about it, right? Yeah. So it's like a thing. But the Ironman is like a 2.4 mile swim and a 112 mile bike ride and then a marathon, and that's a thing that takes all day. And if you can't rush it unless you're like an elite athlete, and I'm no elite athlete. You're talking about like a long, steady pace. Yeah. And it's such a great metaphor for life. And actually, I often tell people that the finish line of an Ironman race is probably the closest picture of heaven I've ever seen. In Hebrews 12, where it's talking about, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us run with perseverance the race that is marked out for us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. Yeah. This whole thing that is there in front of us, the finish line of the race, there's all these people cheering on very ordinary people getting to their finish line, and it's pretty awesome. And the elite athletes out of a triathlon, many of them will have already finished a long time ago, but they'll come back for that last hour and watch the like normies, the people who had no shot come across that finish line. And then someone said, hey, you're an Ironman, you finished this thing. And it's a pretty awesome thing. If you ever get a chance, a finish line of a marathon, finish line of an Ironman triathlon, to go at the end of the day and watch the last people, they're not running, they're walking slow. But getting across the line, and it's pretty awesome metaphor, I think.
Yes.
For life. So,
man, I don't know if I'm going to do a triathlon. You got it sounds great in theory, but man, that's a different beast all by itself.
Like doing it or don't doing it is its own thing. But whatever you're doing in your life, you have the same skills. You're going to have to do it. Like if you're going to build a business, you're going to do something, whatever it is, it's going to take the same thing, steady, consistent effort that not everybody appreciates. Yeah. And just grind to get there. And when you do that stuff, it's a pretty powerful thing. And I got to tell you, man, to be honest, in my life, I'd had so many things that I had started and didn't finish well, that I needed to find the finish line. Like I needed to do this to like rewrite my story. And so when I first signed up for the Ironman, I did the Tulsa Ironman the first year that I was here in 2021. But I initially signed up for an Ironman in 2020 because, of course, it was like, it's COVID, all this stuff. Nobody could do anything, so I just trained.
Right.
And so I initially signed up for an Ironman in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I signed up for that one because it's a downriver swim. And so they say if you like throw a bag of chips in the water, in the river, it will make the swim cutoff. There's enough current in the river.
Yeah.
And I thought, that sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
And so I signed up for that one because I'm not that great of a swimmer. So I went in July of 2020. The world is still like halfway shut down. I went out there and I trained on the course. And I swam in the river, right? I biked the bike course. I ran on the run course over 3 days out there by myself. And then the most important thing I did is I went to a spot in downtown Chattanooga. It's just an intersection. It's hot. It's the summertime, whatever. It's just a street corner. But I knew that's where the Ironman finish line was going to be. And I sat on the street corner and closed my eyes and just sat there for an hour and just imagined, like put in my mind what it was going to look like, with all the lights and all the people cheering and the red carpet at the end and everybody going crazy, in that whole finish line. Because I needed to see the finish line, to like motivate me through my training. Yeah. And of course, then Chattanooga was canceled, like everything was canceled in 2020. And so I rolled into the Tulsa race in 2021. So I'd prepped all year and then I had to wait another year.
Yeah.
But I finished the Tulsa Ironman and it was like one of the coolest moments for me. Yes, for sure. And it wasn't like I was like at the top of the pack or anything, but I got across the line,
And again, like you think it's so interesting, like how your physicality and what you have to do physically, how it reflects your faith walk. Like you talked about, like faith is, you don't see, like you see a preview in your mind. Like you talked about, you had to sit at that finish line where the intersection was, you had to see yourself doing it. And once you saw yourself doing it, you were able to do it. Mm-hmm. Like, it symbolizes, like, when you're doing anything in life, God would give you a preview of what my mentor says. God gives you previews when you pray. And you get those previews, and then you're able to see glimpses of what life should look like. And then as you continue to walk with him, he begins to show you, like he said, he begins to direct and walk the movie out with you.
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting, man.
Yeah, there's nothing that you see anywhere in the world that didn't begin as a thought somewhere. That somebody was willing to like bring into reality. And as a person of faith, that happens in prayer all the time. Yeah. The scripture says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Yeah. And there's a part of this. It's not like self-help. It's not like fake it till you make it. It's not any of this stuff, but it's a belief that I am the person God says I am. I'm going to become the person God says I'm going to become. Mm-hmm. I'm going to live that way in those things. And in the beginning, it sounds crazy. So when I first started running, if I told people like, I'm going to go run the Everest Marathon, or I'm going to go do an Ironman, or I'm going to go do this kind of stuff, like they would laugh at me. To be honest, when I first started running, one of my friends saw on my Facebook profile that I had ran. Okay. And he messaged me. He texted me. He said, "Hey man, did your Facebook get hacked?" And I said, "No, my Facebook didn't get hacked." He said, "Well, somebody's posted pictures of you running. That can't be real." And he wasn't trying to be mean. He's just like
concerned. I guess.
Yeah, like, "Hey man, did you like that ain't you?" And so now, like it's funny right now. Like I get opportunities like this for this conversation because I've been involved in missionary work for my whole adult life. Okay. Yeah. But when I first came to school at ORU, I'd never traveled. I'd never been anywhere. I'd only been on an airplane to fly to Texas to go see my grandparents who lived there. And people from where I'm from, I'm from like a poor rural area. They don't travel. They don't do this stuff. I'm a 4th generation graduate from my high school. Wow. Okay. My great-grandparents, same small town where I grew up. And so nobody traveled in those kind of circumstances. And when I came to school, I thought, I can't do that. I can't travel the world and do gospel work and this stuff. And now that's the only way people know me now. Yeah. And so they come to you and they say, "Hey, you're the missions guy. You're the guy who does these kind of things." But in my mind, still, I look in the mirror and see like the 17-year-old punk kid who didn't know anything. Yeah. And you have to remind yourself, like, no, I've been on a journey, man. I'm trying to become the person God says I can become, right? Like I'm going to close the gap between what's offered to me and where I'm living, with steady, consistent work. And some days I do it well, and some days I don't do it well, and have to get like chastised by the Lord again to be like, "Hey man, where are your eyes? Put your eyes where they're supposed to be. Like get back here where you have to think like I think, not like how you think, and how easy that stuff is." So I'll share. Sorry, I'll just share.
Yeah, go for it.
One quick
share
story.
Share it all.
No, so we're in the middle of a lot of really interesting stuff, man. We have a lot of really cool opportunities all over the world. We're doing a lot of cool things, and the Lord has opened the doors in a lot of ways. And I told all of our different missions partners, "Hey, man, dream big, trust the Lord, go for it." And then they did that. Okay, and then they came back and said, "Hey, you gotta help pay for it." And I was like, "Oh wait, hey, what happened here? Like what's going on? And I might get talk more detail if you want down the road. But I was like, oh geez.
No, go talk the detail. Let's just go there.
Well, okay, so we've got projects going on all over the place. So we've got a lot of stuff happening in Romania. So like when Russia invaded Ukraine, all these Ukrainian refugees spilled over into Romania, and so we start caring for these Ukrainians. They're just there. We got people on the ground, so we're serving them, and so it was really, really wild. When I go back to Romania in December, it'll be my 40th trip to Romania. So we've been there a lot of times. We've taken a lot of people there and served there for a long time. And our guys on the ground, they said, hey, we want, this 2 years ago, they said, or 3 years ago now almost, they said, we want to send a truck of supplies back into Ukraine to help these people that are there. And I said, sure, great, let's do it. So I called around and called in some favors, and I got there on the ground in Romania to help them. And I thought like a box truck or and they had a semi.
Wow.
And so we went to like a Romanian equivalent of a Sam's Club. It's called Metro, and we just bought everything. Like everything. We stacked it in vans, drove these vans back to these apartments that we'd been renting for these people. And we filled the apartments completely full of supplies. And then we backed up a truck and loaded them all into this thing. It was crazy. And so it was like, ended up being like 40,000 pounds worth of, or 30,000 pounds worth of supplies, and like $40,000 worth of stuff, and 17,000 diapers. I mean, just all kinds of stuff that we did. And I was super happy that we got to be a part of this. And we sent that off, we prayed, and it was like a really awesome experience. We came home, and my guys on the ground said, hey, we want to do it again in 3 weeks. And I said, are you guys out of your mind? I called in every favor I had.
Yeah.
You know, and they've sent dozens of trucks.
Wow.
Dozens of trucks. The Ukrainian government gave them land outside of Kyiv. We've rebuilt houses in Kyiv. I don't know if it's wise to build them there yet.
Yeah.
They're still bombing people there. And so we've got, I mean, so like, and that's one of a bunch of places where we've got projects happening. And so all this stuff is taking place, and every moment it's like, man, this is too big for us. We're like small and nimble. We're not those people. And so I was on a mountain called Red Cloud in Colorado 3 weeks ago, something. And and I climbed this mountain, and I had to go down on the other side of the mountain and up another mountain to get to the summit there, and then come back, and then back over Red Cloud and go down. Okay, so just a long day.
Yeah.
And I was on my way back down the mountain. I'd been hiking a long time, and there comes a point where, like, below me, the trail goes way out off to the left, like almost a half mile, and then comes back, and I could see the trail, and it's like 300 feet below me, right? And there's a sign, because it's really steep right there. It says, do not go this way.
Yeah.
Okay? And I thought, I'm gonna go this
go.
way. I'm gonna go this way, and I know what I'm doing. It's fine, whatever, that kind of thing. But it was a risky move, and so it wasn't like I didn't see the sign, or I didn't know the route, or I missed the route. I intentionally chose to go the wrong way. So I started to go down. I immediately regret this. I start to slide a little bit down the mountain. It's really loose, and then my feet come out from under me, and I just slid down the mountain ways, And so I get a little skin up. It's fine. I'm not hurt, but I'm like,
Yeah, you bruised.
Yeah, fine. Like, I'm all scraped up and bleeding a little bit, but it's fine. But I'm laying sideways on the mountain, okay? And I had my headphones on, my aftershocks, and I was listening to my buddy Jordan, who's up in New York. He's preaching a sermon and I listen to his sermons when he's preaching. I give him some feedback occasionally. And so I was listening. And when I come to rest down here, okay, he yells in my ear, even when we fall down. And I said, okay, Lord, you have my attention. I stopped the recording. I'm laying sideways on the mountain,
Yeah.
And I was on my way to preach at a church in Cheyenne with my friend Buzz, and he was a dorm director at ORU back in the day, but he's a pastor in Cheyenne. I was speaking at his church 2 days later, and my whole talk was, God's plan for your life is better than your plan for your life. Okay, that's my thesis. Okay.
Oh, you got proof for that too.
Okay. Well, I'm laying sideways on the mountain, and I felt like the Lord says, okay, you really going to go to Cheyenne and tell all these people that my plan is better when you just keep going your own way? When you see the signs, you know which way to go, and you do it this way anyway. And I was just like, okay, I guess not. I guess not. And so, part of me wants to like keep our ministry nice and small and where it's nimble, and then we, and mostly that's just like, no, you're just being a coward.
Yeah.
And so the Lord just keeps reminding me like, no, set your eyes here. This isn't the way. You want to do it your way, or you want to do it my way. And so it's a really fascinating time, man. We're in an interesting spot. And so we're doing fundraising like in numbers that I have never attempted before. We're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's like, well, here we go.
Yeah.
We're in it again, because like for me, I'm like, no, just do it small, do it.
Yeah.
Make it manageable, make it reasonable at least, and some days not reasonable. Some days it's, the Lord says, hey, no, that's not where we are. You didn't get to go to do all these great things that you got to do so that you can then like like chicken out and not do the hard part when it's time.
Yeah. You said something interesting, and I want you to unpack this. Like, give me the unfiltered, real version of this. You talked about how you were playing it safe.
Mm-hmm.
When you talked about when you came back from your friend in Japan, plus like even like you wanted to control how the ministries ran, like something small, something nimble. But you talked about playing it safe. And so to that person that's listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, what would you tell them? Like looking back at it now, like, man, if there's anything I can tell you, don't play it safe. What would you tell that person?
You know, I think we are created for adventure. I think from the way that we are wired, I think from the very beginning, and I think there's like this huge disconnect, and I'll walk this through. Like, I think there's a huge disconnect between people who sit in pews every week or sit in the church every week and they listen passively to a message about something, and then they're like, well, I guess I should behave myself or not do something else. And their life of faith is basically like, I just got to color inside the lines. And then they read the scripture, okay, and they read the scripture and all they see is God calling people on crazy adventures. And they think like, where did that God go?
Yeah.
Where is he? Like, where's the God who, you know, if you read the first 11 chapters of the Bible, right? Like, you know, creation, then fall, then flood, and then like, okay, we're starting over, and then it just gets worse again, and it culminates in like the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11. It's like, all right, it's so bad, we're just gonna scatter everybody all over the place. And if you stop at Genesis 11, the story is bleak. Okay, like bleak. It's done. Like, it's terrible. It's bad. It was bad, and they got worse, and then it got bad again. And into that, then you have Genesis 12, and this is God saying to Abraham, hey, Abram, get from the place that you know and then your family's house and go to the place that I will show you. I'm going to bless you. I'm going to make your name great. Those who bless you, I will bless. Those who curse you, I will curse. And through you, all nations of the earth will be blessed. It's the beginning of the story of redemption. It's God saying right now, I'm fixing it. And it's going to culminate, we know, in Revelation with people from every tongue, tribe, and nation gathered around the throne.
Yeah.
Right? And I've always thought, you know, if you're going to put millions of people around the throne, you know, like, isn't it a bit of an underwhelming response to just call one guy on an adventure? You know? But this one guy, he's going to do the thing that God asked him to do that he doesn't understand, go to a place he doesn't know, to this thing, and God's going to bless that, and with the blessing of the Lord, it's going to become multitudes around the throne. Yeah. And so when we see these things, or we look at and we see David, and he's saying like, hey, I'll go fight Goliath. You know, how do you get like a whole country to recognize like a shepherd boy as the new king, right? You give him a giant to kill. Yeah. And he says, bring it, let's go. Yeah. You know, and so when people look at the story of the scripture, they see guys like Samuel, right? And Samuel's just a young boy. He's in the temple, you know, and God is whispering to him, hey, Samuel. And the Lord is calling him with a whisper and just calling him onto this stuff. And so for me, you know, the playing it safe part was like, I just want to be like average. I just want to I don't want to get out in that. Yeah. Yeah. You know, but when you read the scripture, you're like, well, I guess that's how it is. Yeah. Right. You have Peter, you know, and Peter's been fishing all night long, right? Luke 5, one of my favorite stories. He's been fishing all night long, caught nothing. Jesus says, hey, let's go fishing. And Peter's like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. You know, like you hear him say, basically, what is he saying? He's like, Master, we fished all night. We didn't catch anything. He said, but nevertheless, and you know what he's saying, right? Like, we'll go do this. We'll go toss the nets in. We're back here in a half hour. It's done. Yeah. He'd go see. I mean, he's the teacher. I'm the fisherman. Right. And they go out and they toss the nets in and they catch so many fish it almost sinks 2 boats. And that is like this really dramatic thing. But then Peter's response is actually even more dramatic to me. It's so surprising. I mean, you read it over 1,000 times and then you look at it, you're like, wait. It says he falls on his knees and says to Jesus, depart from me. I'm a sinful man, O Lord. Right? What he's saying is like, hey, man, I don't know who you're looking for, but it's not me. Yeah. Okay? Like, I'm just a fisherman, you know? And Jesus says, no, you follow me, and from now on you're going to catch men. And he leaves his nets, he's going to follow him. And so when we look at the scripture, what you find is like a God who calls people on great adventure. Yes. Right? And so like we find ourselves in the midst of this situation. And I learned this because my kids are 20 and 18 and 17, okay? And I look at them and I want them to follow the Lord. And so there's a part of me that is like, behave yourself and do this and don't do those things over there and do these things over here. And they're looking at me like, okay, but like, what does that have to do with the God of the scripture who calls people on adventure? You know? So I wanted them to see like, hey, like people of faith, man, there's no place to play it safe. Playing it safe just puts you in a spot where you question everything about your faith. You know, and so many people are in a spot where they're saying like, I wish God would show up in my life. And it's like, well, when have you ever needed him to? When were you ever in a spot where you needed him to? you know. And so for me, I'm just telling you straight up right now, we're going into like a big fundraising season, and it just terrifies me. Like, there's a lot of things that don't scare me. There's a lot of things I do these days. It's like, all right, I can climb a mountain. Apparently I can run a half marathons, whatever, and all this stuff. But like going and asking people for like crazy amounts of money to invest in kingdom projects, it's kind of spooky for me.
Yeah.
And, but I'm like, all right, Lord, you said,
Yeah.
you know, you said, so here I am, you know? And so maybe I'll come talk to you in 2 months and maybe I'll have a different testimony.
Yeah, you definitely will. And we're going to stand and agree with you that you're going to have whatever you need for this campaign. I don't know how much you believe in for, but we know God's going to supply whatever you need because it's for kingdom work.
It's a wild situation, man. And, you know, God's been good to me.
Yeah.
Like beyond anything. I even, you know, I've had a lot of seasons of life where I thought, Lord, just like, can you do something in my life that would bring encouragement to me? Will you like give me one open door or one situation like this? And now, man, I very rarely go like 2 days, 3 days without some really crazy, awesome opportunity happening right now that I would have like thrown a party for 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And I take it for granted even at times, and I forget. And I say, you know, man, I just to be reminded, like, you know, this part of the adventure.
Yeah.
You know, and like a lot of that stuff that I was really frustrated about for a long time, you know, it was preparation for now.
Yeah. Man. So Jimmy, if you were to look through that camera and see 17-year-old Jimmy, or someone that's listening to this podcast, what would be that advice that you would give them?
Man, I've been thinking about that a little bit, and it's not an easy thing. I think, I think what I would say is that you can't yet appreciate what you're going to go through, but it will be worth it. So I was on a mountain called Aconcagua in Argentina a couple of years ago, and the mountain's like the tallest mountain in the world, not in the Himalayas. Okay, so it's a really tall mountain. It's like 22,800. Okay, so I had been on the mountain for 15 days to climb, and while we were up there were a couple of fatalities. It was a really tough situation, not on my team, but just some difficult stuff. It was very, very cold, and on the summit night, I didn't make the summit. I had to turn around, and so we'd been 15 days on the mountain, and we came down, and we were sharing a big tent, like a big like dining tent, with a Russian team that was on their way up. We were on our way down; they were on their way up.
Okay.
And one of the Russian guys says to me, "Hey man, how was it up there?" And I thought, and I tried to like put into words, and I couldn't find the words, because I wanted to tell him like it was the coldest, craziest, most beautiful, incredible, frustrating, awful thing that I ever done, and I just couldn't put it all into words. And all of a sudden, I was back in my mind to my freshman year at ORU, and when I came to school, I was in a ministry class, and one of my professors, who's since become a colleague and a very good friend of mine, he said, and it really upset me, to our freshman class and ministry students, he said, "Hey, if you can do anything else with a clean conscience, you should do that and not do ministry." He said, "But if this is if you can't not do it, this is what you got to do." And it really upset me, because I thought, well, we're paying a lot of money, man, for you to teach us to do this, not for you to discourage us. And it took me a long time to realize, like, he wasn't trying to discourage us. What he was trying to do was a kindness. He was saying, you can't appreciate what's coming. All right? But I'm not saying don't go.
Right.
I'm just saying you can't appreciate what's coming. But it will be worth it. And so what I would say to the young version of me is like, man, you have no idea what's coming. Yeah. No idea what's coming. There are going to be some days. Some of them are real bad. Yeah. You know, but it's worth it. And the opportunities you have on the other side of this stuff is worth it. And if you could fast forward your life to get to here, you would do it again. Okay? But there were a lot of days in the middle of that stuff. Like, I could tell you all kind of silly stories. You know, I've had a lot of funny stories about life and ministry that were like, you know, people are like, you got to be making this up. And I'm like, I'm not that creative. I promise you it's not. But I would just say, hey, stick it out. It will be worth it. Yeah. You know, and because, you know, in those moments, you know, when it gets really tough, it's really hard to explain to somebody like, no, you're gonna be okay. Yeah. You're gonna get through this. You'll weather this. When I planted our church, the first church, I went through like a church planting assessment with this organization, and I went out there. I flew to San Diego. I sat down with these guys. They read through a lot of my papers and different things and stuff. And the first question they asked me in the assessment, they said, "Hey man, have you ever been in a fist fight?" And I thought, what does that have to do with anything? I mean, of course I've been in a fist fight, you know? Like, I've been in a fist fight. And I said, why would you even ask me that? Yeah. And they said, man, we don't have any interest in helping people plant churches. Never been punched in the face.
Okay.
And I said, golly, I don't know. And then in retrospect now, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Because you're going to take some, right?
Yeah, sure will.
What the great philosopher Mike Tyson, right? Everybody got a plan until you get punched in the face. And ministry life is like that.
Yeah.
You know, and now it's a little bit difficult for me because I got these young ministry students. I'm on, I'm on the advisory council for the seminary at ORU. I help with the alumni board. I'm the chaplain of the ORU alumni, and so like I spend a lot of time with these young people coming in. They're like, oh, ministry. I had a breakfast with a guy this week, and I just tried to tell him like, hey man, you cannot yet appreciate what you will go through. It will be worth it, but you will not feel like that all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's what I would say to somebody. What would I say to a young version of me? Is like, it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
You know, just stay the course. Just don't quit.
Yeah. Wow. Jimmy Shaw, ladies and gentlemen. Jimmy, man, thank you so much for having a conversation with me, man. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Yeah.
I am motivated. I don't know if to do a marathon, but something along the lines that represents what symbolically what faith looks like when it's growing and going from glory to glory. And so, man, thank you so much for taking some time to have a conversation with us, man.
Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to wrap this episode up. But like I said in the beginning, hey, if this podcast has helped you, shaped you, motivated you, encouraged you, ignited your faith, hey, I would ask that you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn that notification bell on so you are aware when new episodes are released. And hey, if you want to take your faith just one step further and become a financial partner of this ministry, you can follow the link below. It'll take you to our website. You can become a financial partner with us there and be able to help us take these stories around the faith or around the world to the people that need them. And then lastly, if God's doing something in your life, we would love to know about it. You can reach out to us on social media. You can send us an email. You can drop a comment below, just however you can. And we would love to be able to celebrate what God's doing in your life. And so we're going to have to sign off for today. But until next time, this has been Faith Ignite. God bless you.